So here we are, moving along quite well. We are now going to um, get into Bootstrap, right? And as you can see, I'm making sure that we're working alongside each other. Let's go to our project folder. We have one file in here. We have one template file. We're going to replace that template file. Actually, we'll just create a new one. I'll leave that one alone based on Bootstrap. But just first of all, a little word about Bootstrap. It's an excellent template library for user interface design, and I use it quite a lot. I'm not an expert, but I'll just walk you through basically, some of the key pieces about Bootstrap. So Bootstrap is based on a grid, right? So in essence, you can think of your pages being a grid with 12 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then another 6 on the side, right? And you can create rows, and you can create columns, and the rows can span more than one row. So you could create this block here, and you could create another smaller one here, right? So that's what it's looking like. What we want to do is we want to create a form, and essentially we'll center it, but we won't use any auto function. So imagine you having, columns 4, 4, and 4, right? COL, column 4. So you've got, we'll leave this blank. We'll leave this blank. At the top here, we'll have a name. We'll then have an email. We'll then have 2 password boxes, right? This is for sign up or registration. And then later on, we'll do something else. So a password and a check password, right? And then we'll have a submit button or register, right? So it'll be centered in the page, and it'll all be in one row, right? So these will be sort of form groups, right? And we'll see that as we go along. So that's essentially what we're going to do right now. So let's head over to Bootstrap and let's collect the base template. And it's just a simple, so at this point I'm going to switch to the Visual Studio Code editor. So I will now go to my home folder here, which is hello, and I'll just type code and the period saying open the Visual Studio editor in here. Always shows me this welcome page. There's our program so far. The good thing is now when you open on this side, you can look at the template you've built. So we're going to build a new one here, and we can actually do that now. So while I'm in the templates folder, I click on a plus sign here, asking for a name. So we'll call it register CML. At this point, we won't be saving any data, but we'll collect it all, and then later on we will jump into SQLite in terms of saving. So let's head over to get Bootstrap, strap 5, boot. And this is the website, and they've got a whole bunch of starter. So basically, there's some CSS, and then there's some JavaScript to be copied over. But they do have a template, and they've got this thing called a starter template. So I'm just going to copy the whole thing. There's a copy to clipboard. It's been copied. I'll head back to my Visual Studio Code, and I'll paste it in there. Right, this is my Bootstrap template. You choose only one of the optional, so we can get rid of all this text, right? That as well. This JavaScript goes at the bottom. The Bootstrap code here goes at the top. And we'll title our register for an account. Right, and now we can start adding the Bootstrap features, right? Register for an account. Although not necessary, I like to put everything in a container. So I'll create a div class equals container, and we'll put some margin on the left side. Right? So there's our container. Our heading goes under it, and we'll close our container right there. I like things lining up, so please line up, please line up. Right? I think by default they use 2 tab spaces. So let's add a class to the h1. Class equals display, let's say 3. So all we did was cut and paste a template. We called it register.html. We've added a heading, and we've added this container, this outside container around there. Now we're going to create our we'll create our row. It's one row with our 3 columns. And then what we'll do is we'll add our input boxes, and then we'll just grow it slowly. But before we do that, let's head over to our app. Let's make sure we can actually call it. So a new function, okay, app road register, and we'll call the function register. And right now we're just going to return that template under template register.html. Later on, we'll do the same thing we did with the show test. We'll add some data, and it'll take the data back, and we'll show the user what the data that they entered. And then lastly, we will actually save it, and then maybe later on we'll do some other things with it. So right now, all we're doing is returning a register template. So as you can see, it's very, very easy to work with Python Flask. So let's run our Flask app. Let's go to our main page, and now let's go to our register URL, right? That is display 3. It's fairly big, right? Maybe we should make it smaller. How about we try with register.html, try 4. So number 1 is the biggest size. Let's refresh this page. Yeah, it's a bit smaller, right? So now we have a container. So let's create our first row. Div class equals to row. That's the row where everything will be contained in. Now we'll create 3 columns. Remember, the first one will be empty. Div class equals to column, and it has 4. It takes up 4 spaces, and we'll repeat this 3 times, because I may not have mentioned this, but you're allowed 12. So we're keeping this one intentionally blank, and all our work will be inside the middle one. Let's collapse that. Let's collapse that. In this one, we'll create our form. Form class. I don't think it needs a class. Let's just create the form. And in the form, let's create our first div class equals form group. I believe that's what we'd called it before, right? This is a group of items put together, and label for equals I think we said user name email, right? And there's a username, and it's an input. Type equals form control. It's a class, but the type is text, right? And we'll give it an ID called username and a name also. And I believe that's it for that one. Then we create another one. Class equals form group. And another label equals email. And an input class equals form control. Most of these things you'll just normally just copy. Type equals email, ID equals email, and the name of the control is also equals email. This is what we'll use in Python to get the data back. Okay, we've got a couple of things. Let's head over and see if we can see what our form looks right now. Okay, so we've got a big field and a tiny one here. Let's see what would have happened. Why wasn't this one rendered? Oh, I have misspelled class. That should fix it. It is. That's another email. Okay. This is why I prefer to do things a little at a time. So now we've got two boxes. We can now create the password and the check password. So essentially it's a copy paste. Let's copy those 4 lines, paste them there and there. So this one, password, it's a form control. Type is password. The ID is password, and the name is password. And we come here. This one is for check password, check pass. And we'll also say the type is password, and the ID is check pass, and the name is check pass. Okay, let's refresh our form. And there we've got, so we didn't change the label, so clearly there's a problem there. So this one is password, and this one here is check password. Let's refresh the page. There we go. Right, so with very little knowledge of HTML itself, we just use Bootstrap to give us boxes that look fairly good. And because this is a password type, you can see this is my LastPass utility that's allowing me to check. And then the last thing is a submit button, right? So same thing. So we'll just, I hope it's still in memory. Yep. Form group label for, this one doesn't need a label. and this is a button. Class is equal to, I think that matters, type is equal to submit, and we don't need any of these other parts. So essentially what's going to happen with my button class is a register. So we have a button. Actually, let's give it a Bootstrap class. Button primary. Those are Bootstrap specific classes. I'll summarize all of this at one point. Let's now go back here. Let's refresh. It's a bit too close to the box at the top. Let's give it a little bit of a padding at the top. Margin top, let's say 3. Let's see when that does it. Yep, it's pushed itself down. Right? So we've got this. There's an interesting Bootstrap deflex class, but we won't get into that now. So at this point, we can type stuff. We can type at email.com, password, and we can click the button, and it sends it as a GET request. So we just update our form to say that the action is equal to go back to register. And actually there's when we're dealing with routes, there's probably a better way to do this. Method equals post. So we've got our action and method. Let's refresh register, bring our form back. Andrew at email.com, pass register. The method is not required, so they're simply just telling us in our application class here we have to allow method equals, I normally put both of them, although only one of them is really required. Okay, it was telling us that that method was not required. So now if we refresh this, actually just press enter, type error, let's take a look. Methods with an S. There we go. Andrew, pass. Please. It's checking my email. Excellent. There. So let's take a break, and then when we'll be back, we'll automate this. We'll send some data back. Thank you.